Welcome everyone to day two of the 3.6 Advanced Certification Training. Let's wait for a few more minutes until everyone's here. Welcome everyone to the day two of the 3.6 Advanced Training. Yesterday we saw about how to install a 3.6 on-premise or self-hosted installs, and also we saw about all the ports that on the network side that requires for the 3.6 to communicate to the outside world or for traffic flow. And also we saw about the firewall configuration and things like that during yesterday's module. And yeah, so if you have any questions with yesterday's module or today's module, feel free to post it on the chat. And the recordings for these sessions will be uploaded to our YouTube page, Leader Academy YouTube page, after all the sessions are completed. And the recordings for the previous training that I did 2 months ago is already available on the YouTube page. And so 95% of the contents are the same. But yeah, so once all the 3 days are completed, we'll be uploading these recordings to our YouTube page. Let's begin with our today's module. Today we are going to see about backups. So backing up your 3.6 system regularly helps prevent data loss. And you need to have regular backups when you are self-hosting it or hosting it on-prem on a server or a bare metal NUC. So it's in case of hardware failure, or software corruption or human error, so you at least have a backup to restore the system so you don't have to build everything from scratch. And also backups are so important when you're also like upgrading your system or migrating your system from one platform, hosting platform to another. So for worst case scenario, you at least have a backup so you can spin off another instance within 10-15 minutes. But if not, you might need to build everything from scratch. So backups are always important. And these are always important when you're migrating a system or upgrading a system, and also self-hosting an instance. If you're hosting it with 3CX, you also are responsible to take regular backups, but 3.6 also hold backup for 7 days, just in case if something happened, 3.6 can provide you with a backup. But if you ask after like 2 weeks or so, they won't hold, but they hold backups for just for 7 days. So in that period, they can provide you with the latest last restoration point, so you can directly install from there. So backup usage, so 3.6, it stores the 3.6 config in a single zip file, and it's used for migration. So host server change, for example, let's say you're hosting it on premise or locally on a bare metal NUC, and you want to switch it to self-hosted Lightsail instance. So then it's always good to take backup and host it to or from on premise. So let's say you're having old server or a bare metal NUC and you want to upgrade it or to put the same system into a newer or later version. So you can take a backup and install it onto the newer version. Or OS change, whether you want to change from Windows to Linux or Linux to Windows. So you can take a backup and restore it. I think there was a question yesterday regarding if a backup from a Windows system or Linux system can work on the other UI. So basically, if you're taking a backup from the 3.6, it's just going to contain the configs of the 3.6. So it doesn't matter where it's hosted or which platform it's hosted, you can use it on other platforms. And also this might be, you might have already done the upgrades for your existing system already. But if you're still having version 18 instances, so for updating from version 18, update 9 to version 20, so backups are required, or you can make use of the backup option. And backup usage. So these are basically for reversion and recovery, and also change ports use for on-premise installation or failover sync. So it's always good to have backup either stored locally or on cloud, so not on the same. Because people sometimes they say they take regular backups, and if we ask like where they're storing it, they say it's on the same virtual machine. So what happens if there is a hardware failure and the machine is corrupted? So if you're taking regular backups and putting it on the same machine, and there is if the machine is the hardware is corrupted, so you cannot even get back to the backup file. So it's always recommended to store it on locally, or when I say locally, so it's good to store it on to a different machine or to your local PC, not on the same machine, or also like store it on a cloud platform so that you can access and things like that. That's always the best practice to do. And backup host data. So there are a few things that can be restored, and there are a few things that cannot be restored. So host data like SIP and tunnel port. SIP port is the 5060 and tunnel port is the 5090. We saw that during the firewall module yesterday. So for a trunk registration or any registration or SIP, it uses the 5060, and tunnel is basically everything that the 3.6 app or the SPC, they talk through the 5090 tunnel port. And the web server port 5001 or external RTP ports from 9000 to 10999 or 11,000, and internal and external IP address of the PBX. All these data are not stored on the backup file. And it is good in a way because let's say you're moving from one from a local bare metal NUC or a local install, on-premise install to a cloud instance. If the backup contains the public IP of the local instance, when you move it to the cloud, so nothing will come back because that is a IP change. So, or it might throw some errors that there is some mismatch of the host machine and things like that. So it might not even install. So that's why it's good that the internal external IP addresses are not included in the backup. And the other thing that I mentioned during the basic training is it's always recommended to use the FQDN to register the physical handsets or the desk phones. Because if you use the FQDN, then even when the IP address is changed, the FQDN will point to the new IP, the handset will come back automatically. So if you're using the IP address to register those handsets, then you need to re-register or re-provision all those handsets all over again. So the things that are included in the backup are the main configuration and the user data. So basically system user extensions and department setting, everything will be carried out or pulled to the backup file. Trunks and outbound rules, the SIP trunks that you have and the outbound rules that you've configured will be included in the backups. And audio files, so whether you have any voicemail greetings, intro prompt, music on hold, or any cue music on hold, or any greetings that you have on the file, so will be can be added or will be added to the backup file. And all the call history, chat history, recording history, so everything will be carried out. And so the call history, chat history, if you have a purge option, let's say you've set up something like every 30 days it needs to reset or it needs to purge all the old data, then only the data that's on the 3.6 will be included in the backup. And any custom templates for handsets or any SIP provider that you're using on the 3.6 will also be included in the backup. And any custom logos or company logos or any custom firmware that you're using, all the fax histories, voicemail recordings and voicemail greetings, and also the FQDN and license key. Those are the main ones, the FQDN and license key. So all these will be included inside the backup. So along with the call flows and stuff. So everything in here. So basically the things that you built in your current system. So if you take a backup and restore it onto the other or the new instance, all these things is going to be there. So you don't need to make much changes. You might need to tweak a bits and pieces there, but basically 99% of the things will be moved to the new system when you take a backup and restore it. And there are additional options where you can enable or disable. So call recordings, because call recordings occupy large space or large storage. So if you want to include call recordings, you can include, but if you don't want to it, you can just uncheck the box. So this is how the backup file look like. Sorry, backup menu looks like, and I'll show this a bit more in detail while we are doing the demo later today. So with the backup, so you have the backup now button, so which is basically it's going to take a backup then and there. And schedule backup, you can also schedule a backup, like for example, every Sunday at 2 a.m. it needs to run a backup and store it. So it can do it. Or restore a backup is basically if you have a backup or last restored point and you want to do it, so you can do it. Or download the file is basically backing up now. We'll give you the file and you can download it, and delete a backup is basically deleting a backup that you created. And you can give a name. It's mandatory to give a name to the backup, and you can give any name to the backup. And temporary recordings, so that is basically if you want to include or exclude recordings. And if you are archiving the recordings to Google Bucket or cloud storage, you can ignore or disable that, because if that is already stored on a Google Bucket or storage or any cloud platform, then you don't need to include a backup. That's going to occupy some storage to it. Backup compression, so disabling compression will speed up the backup and restore option. But the backup size, if you're not compressing it, then the backup size will increase. So you need to have make sure you have enough storage to download or upload those backup. And you can for security purpose, you can also you also have an option to like encrypt your backup with a password. But whatever password that you are entering, so make sure you remember it, because I think a few months ago there was an issue when a partner was upgrading from version 18 to 20, and then he took a backup encrypted with a password, and then he took a backup encrypted with a password, and then he nuked the old system, and then when he reinstalled it and put the backup and the password, so it was wrong. So either he didn't take note of the password, or there was a small typo on the password that he was not aware, and he was not able to get into the or install the new system with the backup at all because he forgot the password or the password mismatch. So you need to make sure it's what I always do when I do things like this is I write the password onto a notepad, and then I save the notepad, and then I copy paste the password from the notepad to here. So that in that way, so you can neglect all the errors that you can make, because it might be a small error. You might have a space or a dot right next to it. You might not aware, and then yeah. And also there are some certain times that you can try the password. So you need to make sure whatever password, if you're encrypting it, make sure you know the password that you're entering. Is there anywhere that tells us how much storage space is required for the backup to decide if we need to compress the backup? Most of the time people compress the backup, but you can get a rough idea from the storage menu, because it's going to show you like how much space is occupied for each and every one. And then you add another 2 gig or 3 gig buffer for the system configuration and things like that. So by that way, you get a rough idea like how much how many gigs of storage you would need. So yeah, so I'll show you like where to see those storage options during the demo. And actually, it was on the second, the next slide itself. So you can see, from this image, the fax is 706 bytes, recordings 5.5 meg, voicemails 247 kilobytes, and chat files 0 gig. And so that's basically the data usage. And so that's just the storage that's used for voicemail, recording, faxes, and chat files. And on top of it, always give a 2 to 3 gig buffer for the system configuration and system settings. Most of the time, the system configuration and system settings for up to like 20 to 30 users, it's like 1 to 3 gigs. So basic, if the system is big, keep more buffer, but this will give you a rough idea like how much storage you will need. So yeah, so local storage location option. So you can store, enable remote data archiving or storage either to a local disk like a SSD or a SATA disk or a SAN, and only for demand backups. And you can also store it to a FTP drive or a SFTP drive, or you can also store it on SMB or a Google Storage Bucket or SharePoint. And it's always good if you store it on cloud. So for example, I'll take Breeze as an example. We have our backups taken daily and stored it on a Google Bucket, and every night, I think at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. So it takes a backup and store it on the Google Bucket. And the next day when it takes another backup, so it's going to need, I think for 7 days we hold the backups, and it keeps on doing it for every day. So by that way, we make sure like even the next morning we walk into the office and we see the 3.6 is completely down. We have a backup that we can restore everything back within 15 minutes. So it's always good to remote archive the backup and storing it on a cloud. And backup recordings do not need to be included in the backups. If you're taking a backup, you can just check that box to include recordings. But if you don't want, and if you're already archiving it, you don't need to add it into the backup option. And backup scheduling, so this makes things easier. You don't have to manually go or log in each and every time to take a backup or store it. So you can choose a backup option, and you can set schedule or occurrence for hourly or daily or weekly. And you can also set up a rotation. So basically, so every day at 0000 hours, it needs to take a backup. And it needs to include recordings or not and things like that. You can do that directly from here. And command line backups, it's available for both Windows and Linux. So all backup options are available. So you'll be able to like set different local paths for backup file. And also from the command line, you can, so basically this is when we install the instances today. So I spoke about the SSH access or the root access. You need that to take a backup directly from the backend. So even if the 3.6 UI is down, you're not able to reach the 3.6 server, but the VM is still running, you can, and you have the root access, you can SSH to the backend and you can pull a backup and restore it onto a new system. And you can also back up to FTP storage or SMB or Google storage. But cloud storage like SharePoint, no, so you can only download it locally, but anything you cannot store it to FTP, SMB, or Google storage or SharePoint, those are not supported. Do you have any questions so far? Feel free to ask any questions. Do the same backup rules apply to hosted instance? Yes, the option that you will see is pretty much the same. You can take a backup immediately, or you can schedule a backup and store it to a cloud storage. You can do those things, but you cannot do the command line backups because you won't have the backend or SSH access to the virtual machines. Let's jump into a quick demo. Yep, so this is the same 3CX that we, this is our test 3CX that we use. And for backup, there is a backup option on the left menu option, and you can see there are different options available. So this 3CX is hosted on a private cloud, I think AWS or Lightsail, yeah. So yeah, so backup now is what it does is it gives you the option if you give like any name, set test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if I want to include recordings, I can, or disable backup compression, I can. If I don't want to encrypt, so I can just click OK, and that's going to automatically run the backup in the background. And I'll refresh. It should automatically pop up in here. So test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see it's 68 and again 9. I think it's done. That's pretty much everything on the system because there is not much happening on the system because it's a test system that we use for basic testing and stuff. And scheduler backup. So this is where you can enable a scheduler, and weekly at 2 a.m. on Sunday, it needs to take a backup, and you can schedule it. And if you want to restore a backup, let's say I want to restore it to test 2, backup, which was taken on May 21, 2025. All I do is select the backup, restore, and that's it. It's going to go to that particular checkpoint. And if I want to delete the backup, so if I want to download it locally, so I just select it. That's a big file. Let me download the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll click on it, download, and that basically going to download the backup file. And I can open the backup file and yeah. So that's basically everything on the backup includes. You can see the all the certificates and everything for FQDN and all this stuff, all the chat files, the database tables for everything that's on the 3CX, facts, portal modules, any prompts, additional settings that you have on the 3CX, provisioning. That is basically that includes the physical handsets and stuff. Reports logo, voicemail prop, voicemails, and metadata. So pretty much everything that's on the 3CX, it's already included in the backup. And if you want to delete a backup, so you can just select it and delete it, or you can download it locally. And if you want a failover setup, you can do it. And settings will give you basically where you want to store the local backups. So basically, these ones, because since I'm logged into my PC and then I'm clicking download, it's downloading it to my PC locally here. But where it's actually stored behind this 3CX, whenever you took a backup now, so this is the path for it to. Let's say you have SSH access and you want to locate the backup or pull the file manually from there. So that's the place where you need to look for the backup files. And storage and stuff. So if you go to system and then storage, so you have the remote archive option. So if you do that, so you can store it on FTP or Google Storage or SMB or SFTP or SharePoint or AWS bucket. And you give the path, username, password for the FTP, or if it is Google Storage, you put the JSON key or the private key. Oopsie. And select the folder path and data archiving. So what's all the data that you want to archive? So chat files, I want recordings and voicemail. I don't need any faxes, or I don't need any chat files, but I need access. So for auto archive everything after 7 days or 1 day or 30 days, you can do it. And these are the storage stuff. And backup archive. So that's basically the data archiving. And this is the main backup archive. So basically what it does is I want to enable a backup archive, and folder name is testing backup, rotation 1, data usage. So you can see how many backups are there and what's the storage that's used weekly or daily or 2 a.m. or weekly at 2 a.m. So things like that you can do directly from here. So yeah, that is pretty much everything on backups. Taking regular backup is a must to ensure your operational resilience in the event of technical failures or any data corruption or 3CX corruption or the hardware corruption and things like that. 3CX provides facility to take backups easily, either on-demand backup, which is the backup now, or you can schedule a regular backup. And also important part of a proper backup procedure is to have a backup stored in different location rather than the server. So this is basically the server. So it's always good to have the 3CX backups stored separately onto a cloud storage or to a local machine or to a different part. So you make sure you have something that you can run into even if the 3CX is down. So that, and yeah, so the command line options for taking and restoring backups, that's available for on-premise install. So that's one of the key advantage of having on-premise install. But command line backups, you can only store it to a local machine or move to a different part, but you cannot store it to a cloud storage or FTP service. So that is pretty much everything for backups on 3CX. Do you have any questions? Does the type would list private cloud as private cloud or also locally stored? Sorry, I'm not able to grasp. Can you rephrase the question, please? Yeah, so that's basically says locally stored because it's locally stored onto the virtual machine, the cloud instance itself. So because from the three, so that will show information from the 3.6 perspective. So that is getting locally stored to the virtual machines under this folder path. So that's what it means. But if you're taking like a scheduled backup from here, if you're scheduling a backup from here and you're doing it to a FTP storage or a Google bucket, it's going to tell a different thing on the type, like cloud storage or external storage. I hope I was clear, Cesar. Any other questions, guys? Can you please go through the VMware backup site, please? Yeah, sure. So basically, VMware is also considered as a local on-prem installation because basically you are having a virtual machine that's going to like replicate a normal NUC specifications, and you're entering it in there. So you basically, so from the virtual machine, you can SSH directly from the VMware, and you can use the command line backup. So the command lines, there are different commands that's available. So if you just search for 3CX backup and restore, and if you scroll down to the last, you should have the so backup and restore per command line. So you have commands that you can run to directly pull the backup. So this is the default path that the files are stored. So you have the different commands and stuff like that, which can you see my screen? I think for a few seconds my screen dropped or my internet dropped. Yeah, cool. So yeah, so the so if it is a cloud virtual machine or Linux machine or a Windows machine, so if it is a private cloud or your self-hosted cloud or on-premise or virtual machine, they all treat it the same. It's a self-hosted install. And let's say it's on Linux, you have the Linux commands to directly just run. All you need to do is copy paste, and if any changes, for example, you need a different file name and things like that, you can just put it. And if you're familiar with Linux more, you might have already be familiar with all these commands and things like that. So all you need to do is run directly from there. From the 3CX backup option, is there an option for instance or immediate backup? For example, backup in case of firmware or software upgrade. However, is this handled? So no, so you cannot schedule, if you're asking if you can schedule a backup automatically when there is an upgrade or things like that, no. So you can use the scheduler, but it's going to be periodically. So it's going to be just occurring hardly daily or weekly, and it's going to happen only during that time. But backup now, it's just going to take a backup just then and there. As soon as you click it, it's going to give you a backup. So it's recommended, or it's good, like whenever you're doing an upgrade or firmware upgrade or 3.6 upgrade, so you just do a backup, download the file, and then do the update. So that way you have a backup local stored locally, and yeah. Is there a backup for the devices, that is the physical VoIP handsets? Yes. So when the backup also includes the handset information along with it, when it takes the user details. So basically, it takes everything that's on the user details, the VLF that's configured, the forwarding rules, status, if it is there's a custom officers, and also the handsets or IP phone config. So everything that's on the user will be carried to the backup file. Is there an NFR for 3.6, and how can one get this? So from your 3.6 partner portal or the customer portal, so there is an add trial button at the top. Let me see if I can share that. Yeah, so the add trial button at the top. So you can click on it to install a 28 days trial period if you're a customer. But if you're a 3.6 partner, you will automatically get 2 NFR licenses for testing or production purpose. Cool. Let's take a quick 5-minute break, and before jumping into the next modules. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat, guys. So how to get this training modules to retrain our stuff? All these recordings are available on our YouTube page. So if you go to Leader Academy, so everything should be there. I can show you. if you go to playlist, you can see the 3.6 Advanced Certification Training, basic training from May 2025. And so once this training is completed, so I will also be uploading the August and September training once to the YouTube page. So from there, you can access these training videos and could you please elaborate about provisioning with FQDN? Are you referring to SPC or desk phones? No, the desk phones. Let me, yeah. So for example, if you go to a user and let's say test user 2, IP phone, not this one. No, I can use that. So T54W. So the usually it's going to use this provisioning link to provision, but if it is an on-prem install, you would also have the option to choose or a drop-down box to choose which interface it needs to, or which host IP or server that it needs to use to. So in that, let me see, I think it should show on the generic one. No, it doesn't show up in here, but yes, something like this, a routing device. So that's basically selecting the SPC, but you will also have an option to like select, let me take this one. Yeah, since it's a cloud hosted, it doesn't show there, but you will have an option to like select either you use the local IP or a local LAN connection or specific IP or FQDN. But if you're doing auto provision, you don't need to worry because it's going to use the FQDN. Sometimes people tend to use the IP address directly on the handset rather than manually putting it. Rather than the FQDN. So in that scenario, so you need to always make sure you use the FQDN. And there is nothing wrong in using the IP address. It's just basically the same, but just in case if you migrate from one service to another, one platform to another, then the IP will be changed. So in that scenario, you might need to get into the handset and re-update to the FQDN or to the new IP. So that's the only main thing. Cool. Let's jump into the next module, which is bridges. So as the name suggests, so basically bridge is something that you can connect between two 3.6s. For example, I can give you our leader our in-house 3.6 as an example. So we have two different 3.6s, one for leader and one for Breeze Connect. But what we have is we have a bridge in between them both that makes us to call internally between the two 3.6s. So I can dial an extension number or search for a user, and I can directly pick. So I'm on the leader, Breeze 3CX, and if I want to call someone on leader, I don't have to dial their main number or the PSTN number and go through the trunk. I can just search for the name, and then I can dial them internally. So that's what the bridge. It's basically to connect two 3.6s, two different cities, or so basically you might have like 3.6s in two different cities or countries, and you can have a bridge in between so that they can dial internally. So in this chapter, we'll basically see how bridges work and how to configure them. We'll also have a different scenarios for better understanding. So bridges, so basically they connect remote PBXs together. And so there are two main bridge ends, which is the master and the slave. So let's say there are two 3CX and you want to bridge between. So you need to put one as a master and the other one as slave. So basically when put one 3.6 as a master, so the slave will try to connect to the master and master will authenticate. But functioning wise, they both can do exactly same things. And tunnel bridge, so yes, as the name suggests, 3.6 uses the tunnel port 5090. So everything between the 3.6 then will be tunneled through the 5090 port, and it sends traffic using the tunnel port. And it requires a pro or enterprise license. You cannot do or add a bridge on the 3.6 free version. So from the this example, you can see there is a master. Oops. Yeah, so you can see there is a master PBX and the slave PBX, and you have master PBX extensions, some handsets or users connected under, and they are sitting on under firewall A. And B is on a different subnet with extensions under there and sitting under firewall B. And you can see it's you can connect them together using the 5090 port through the internet. So basically now extension 100 can dial extension 200 internally using the tunnel bridge rather than calling from the extension to the main business number through the trunk to the outside world and through the trunk to the 3.6 again on the slave PBX. So basically, master bridge listens for incoming connections from the slave bridge, and it's tunneled through the 5090 port and creating a master bridge. So basically, the bridge name, it shows up on the present screen. And the outbound rule prefix, you need to set up, there are something, certain things that you need to configure, right? So that the master bridge A can reach master bridge, sorry, slave bridge B, or 3.6A and 3.6B. So you need to put a prefix to reach to the other side of the bridge, and it can be blank depending on the setup. When I say blank depending on the setup, if there are no overlapping extensions between them, between the two 3CX, you don't need a prefix. You can just directly dial through. But if there are overlapping extension number, for example, the example that we saw here, you can see extensions 100 and 101. What if 3.6B also have extension 100 and 101? Then you need a prefix. We'll be looking into the prefix option a bit more in detail in the upcoming slides. And the virtual extension number, so as soon as you create a master bridge, it will give you a virtual extension number. You can change it. That basically needs to match a virtual extension number on the slave bridge. And the maximum simultaneous of calls on the license count towards the calls and slave bridges. Yes, can you hear me, Andre? Can everyone hear me? Can you give me a... Oh, thanks, guys. Andre, can you check your speaker or volume? Yeah, it seems the sound is working right. So creating the master bridge. So virtual extension number needs to match the master and the slave bridge. And authentication. As soon as you create the master bridge, it gives you a authentication password. So that is something you need to make note, and that is what you'll be entering it on the slave bridge. And the security must be complex. Give a more complex password, because if someone get access to the if someone knows what the IP address of your 3.6 is, and someone knows what the password is or able to crack the password is, they can basically make a bridge connection between your 3.6 and they might have some toll fraud or things like that. So make sure the password is complex. And the tunnel bridge, so the remote PBX uses tunnel connection check and FQDN and tunnel ports of the slave. So basically you'll be entering the FQDN of the remote PBX, which is the other 3CX, and the tunnel port. So basically now the master knows this is the 3CX and this is the password that I authenticate with, this is the virtual extension number, and this is the port that I need to talk to. So that's basically that. And slave bridge, it initiates the register. So when you so on the 3.6b, you'll be creating a bridge as a slave, and then you'll be entering the virtual extension number, the password, and the password from the 3.6a, and also you'll be entering the FQDN or the IP address of the 3.6a in the slave bridge with the tunnel port same 5090. And so must also think that you need to make sure, so the master and slave bridge needs to be on the same version and update. So the update version and the version needs to match for the master and slave bridge for you to have like better communication or better connection. Creating a bridge slave. So basically it appears on the present screen. So outbound rule prefix can be blank depending on the setup. So yeah, as mentioned previously, if you have overlapping numbers, you need to have a prefix entered. But if you don't have overlapping numbers and if you pre-plan everything, then you don't need to have a prefix. It can be planned. It's just if you have a prefix, so let's say 101, 100, 101, 102 is the range on both the users, both the 3.6s. And it's just whenever you want to dial 101 on the other 3.6, you need to put a prefix. Let's say 4 is the prefix, you need to dial 4101 to get to the other 3.6. And so yeah, the virtual extension number max simultaneous calls is counted towards, and they need to match the master bridge. The slaves extensions need the prefix or either. They both need the prefix if they have matching or overlapping extension numbers. So for example, let's say the prefix is 4. When A wants to call extension 101 on B, they need to dial 4101. And so vice versa. If slave wants to call extension on A, then they need to dial 4101 or 102 depending on them. But if there are no overlapping numbers and you don't have to provide any outbound rule prefix, and then outbound prefix, and then it can just work straight away. And bridge presence information. So this is something that you can might be useful, because basically you can also exchange the present information. For example, when I search an extension on slave 3.6b, and I will be able to see whether they're available away on DND and things like that. Also the other way, vice versa, and you can also restrict it if you want to, depending on how you want to set things up. So basically, exchange presence information. So send which user department, you can select which user department needs to be displayed on the remote side, and also receive, so which user should receive information from the remote side or visible on the 3.6 side. You can also set these bridges for specific departments. Let's say there are like 100+ users on both sides and only the management team needs to talk to each other. You can just put them on a separate department and you just allow presence for them. And IP phones cannot be used for remote system BLF. So you cannot set up a BLF to dial an extension directly on the other one. But you cannot set up BLF, but you can do a speed dial. It's just you cannot see the presence, but you can set up a speed dial to extension that's on the other side, and it can still work as it's intended. Can 3CX bridges be used to route calls between tenants with different dial plans or codecs, and how that would basically so when a call comes in, let's say an external call comes to 36A and you're answering it, so basically you will have the matching so the matching versions and everything. So it doesn't matter what trunk it is. So 36A answers the call externally, and it just passes the call through the tunnel port to the 36B. So the connection still establishes. So basically, A is calling B, and B is 36A, and I'd say vice versa. A is calling 361, and 361 is forwarding to 362. So basically, the connection is still established through the 361 and 2, and it's passing the details through the tunnel port. So basically, 362 can have a chat with the caller 1 on A. At the same time, it's just passing through the tunnel port, and the connection is still established through the 361. So the simultaneous calls will also be occupied on the 361 and 2 as well. So since it's happening through the tunnel port, so you won't have any call quality issue or things like that. So planning ahead for extension number, this is what I previously mentioned. So the extension digit overlap. So let's say this is a new project and you know 36A and B will have a bridge in between. So you can plan the digit accordingly. For example, the master bridge is extension digit 4 and slave bridge extension digit 4. You can plan all the extension starts with 1. So that is 1000, 1001, 1002, and the slave bridge starts everything with 2. In that scenario, you don't need a prefix because it can directly connect through because there is no overlapping extensions. And in the master bridge to save, you can put prefix 2 or prefix 1, and the length will be 4, which is basically the extension length. No prefix in the bridge setting is required because you don't have overlapping extension numbers. In scenario 2, let's say you don't have a numbering plan. So there are matching numbers. So master is 4 and slave is 4, and extension numbers may overlap. In that scenario, you need to have a prefix. For example, master to slave, you can have a prefix as 9, let's say prefix is 9 and the extension digit is 5. Because whenever you want to call someone on slave bridge or the other 3CX, you will be dialing so 91001, and you will be stripping off the 9 and passing it through the bridge. So basically, you'll be calling through the bridge, but it just strips off the 9 and it sends just the 1001 to the other side, so you can call it. And the same setting needs to happen on the slave bridge. When they try to dial, they need to have a prefix, they need to dial, and it's going to strip the prefix, and then it's going to do that. So in the previous one, there is no stripping of the numbers required because there is no overlap PIDs. But with the no numbering plan, or if you haven't planned things accordingly, so you need to do that. And you can ask, can bridges work only with one way? No, you can do a 3-way bridge or more a 4-way bridge as well. So basically, you can do it in any way. So in this example, you can see there are 3 3/6s, A, B, and C, and you can set something like A is the master and B is the slave. And also you can set a second bridge, A is the master and C is the slave. So that basically establishes a connection between A, B, and AC. Now we need a connection between B and C that basically you can put one as master and the other one as slave. So basically now A and B have connection, A and C have connection, B and A and have connection, B and C have connection. and C and A have connection, and C and B have connection. So basically that is a three-way bridge. And so yes, so if you're doing that, it's always good to have the numbering plan. So for example, PBXA have extension length 1 and a 1,000,000. We have 2,000,000 and extensions, and C has 3,000,000 extensions, and vice versa. And the only thing is, if you don't have a numbering plan for a three-way bridge, then you need to have different prefixes. For example, if A wants to dial B, then they need to have a particular prefix, and if A want to dial C, then they need to have a different prefix so that that doesn't get confused. In admin console, where do we configure the prefix departments, etc.? Yep, I'll show you how to create a master bridge or a slave bridge during the demo. And so yeah, for cross-office presence, so for all available call users in presence, so you would be able to like call, video call, chat, web meeting. So all the basic operations you would be able to do directly from there. And yeah, let's now jump into a quick demo. Yeah, so to adding a bridge, you can go to voice and chat, and you can see the add bridge option. So you go here and you select master or slave. So you select master. You can give it a name. Let's say 3CXA, and virtual extension number. You can edit it. So if you want a different number, you can do it. And simultaneous calls, that's the maximum simultaneous calls through the bridge. You can restrict it to 4. So that's basically you allow only 4 calls through the bridge. And outbound rule prefix, so this is where the outbound rule prefix, if you want to have, there is no numbering plan, then you need to have a prefix, let's say 5. Let's see. 5 as an example, and it gives you the authentication password and remote PBX tunnel. So I give the remote PBX IP, which is the 36. The other 36 is IP or the FQDN here, and the tunnel code. And then so I'll say for now. And presence. So this is where publish information. If I want to add particular department, I'll say only the default department and the AI department needs to have. The new department doesn't need to publish information, so I can restrict it from there. And receive information. So if I want to select particular users, so the remote PBX's host extension, which is the 36B's FQDN, and I can select users, which particular users needs to have that particular information and things like that. And advanced, basically, yeah, so the codecs and things that you've asked previously, so allow inbound calls or outbound calls, PBX delivers, or if I want to enable SRTP, and if you want different codecs, maybe you have maybe you have the second 3.6 on a different country, and they're with a different provider, and that provider uses different codecs. You can add them under here or configure them, and the caller ID control what you need to display and things like that. So yeah, so that's pretty much everything on master. So basically on master, you have the virtual extension number, you have the authentication password, and you need to give the 3CXB's FQDN in here. And when I go to create a slave bridge, you can see the extension number. I need to have the virtual extension number matching the original one. And you can see the authentication password is empty because we need to put the password from the master bridge in here because this is a slave bridge. And the simultaneous call, we set there 4, so we need to match 4 in here. So authentication password we put there, and remote PBX, this is the host PBX. So remote uses tunnel, and you need to put the host PBX's FQDN in here, and 5090. And presence, same, so publish information or receive information, advanced is the same. And whenever you want to send calls to a 3CX, so let me check if there is already a bridge. Now, so let's create a master bridge. I'm going to 3CXA save. If I go to outbound rules, if I click on add rule, I can set for to slave bridge and calls with prefix anything, calls from particular extent, calls with length of 4, which is basically if they dial with the prefix. And I can add which departments can use this, or I can leave it blank. And I'll use the 36A, which is the bridge that we created now. So anyone dialing now digits with length 4, which is basically 4 and then the extension number, since there is overlapping extension on 36B, it needs to go through 36A, go through the bridge, and it needs to strip the first digit and send it. So that's how you play around with the outbound rules if you have overlapping extension number. So if you don't have overlapping extension number, you wouldn't need it. So you just do a no digit and then send the number as it is. But if there is overlapping numbers, you need to strip the first digit and send the number to the other side through the particular bridge, and that's how you configure. So yeah, so basically interconnecting separate branch offices or optimizing PSTN connection with local SIP providers, all possible using the bridges. That helps unifying your internal operations, or you can share resources and things like that. Also, yeah, that's pretty much everything on bridges for today. Yeah, so today this session seemed to be a bit short because the modules for today is bridges and sorry, my headset dropped a bit. But yeah, so today the modules was just on backups and the bridges. So if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat. And tomorrow we'll be looking into a bit more in detail. It might be a lengthy session, so because we will be looking at the troubleshooting options, message, taking a packet capture, and looking at the basic stuffs of the packet capture and things like that. So that's for tomorrow's module. So yeah, so any questions, guys? Feel free to post it on the chat. If you have any questions related to yesterday's module or today's module, feel free to post it on the chat, guys. Any questions? If there are no further questions, we can finish off today's session a bit early, but I'll stay here for another 5-10 minutes just in case if you have any questions. Thanks everyone for attending.